Welcome, everybody. We'll get started in just a few minutes once we give folks a chance to load on up. Let's see. Everybody, welcome again. If I didn't welcome you before, we'll get started in just a minute or so. Cool. So welcome, everybody. I'm Greg, Tech for Campaigns CEO. Very excited for tonight's program with author David Daley and an amazing set of 3 candidates from the Minnesota DFL. So just to sort of give you a rundown, we're going to do a bit of updates on Tech for Campaigns, new things we're working on, states that we're focused on, including Minnesota, and then we'll hand it to David, to speak about some of what he's written about and kind of he sees the map and the update for the political year, and then throw it to the candidates to hear about what their experiences with gerrymandering and kind of what campaigning in 2022 looks like and feels like. So with that, I will hand it to Amanda, our head of operations, to run through what we're up to.
Yes, hi everyone. So grateful that you all could be here. And yeah, let's get into some TFC updates. So I first want to touch on what's happening in the States, because this is the stuff that drives what we do at TFC. Want to highlight 2 kind of really disappointing and frustrating headlines. The first that have come out in the last week or so. First is the Don't Say Gay bill that passed in Florida. This is a part of a larger effort on behalf of the GOP across the country to just politicize what's taught in schools. And this is really stuff that's affecting just the day-to-day of parents and kids across the country. And then voter suppression in Texas. We've known about these voter suppression efforts for a while now, and with the primary elections, we're kind of seeing it all come to fruition. And I think this number is actually in the 20,000s now for rejected mail-in ballots. So yeah, over 20,000 rejected mail-in ballots from this past election. And so yeah, disappointing news. Reiterates definitely the need to educate voters on what's an intentionally very confusing and complicated process for voting. And we're definitely making that a priority in our work here at TFC in 2022. And just both of these are especially noteworthy reminders of the type of legislation that's impacting the daily lives of Americans and how important it is to invest in flipping state legislatures in 2022. And And another piece of information that came out recently is that top campaigns are still ignoring digital. Top campaigns have only spent in 2022 7% of their funds on digital versus the industry standard of commercial advertisers spending 63%. And instead, they're spending about 80% on cable and TV, even though almost half of US homes are now CTV only, connected TV only, and don't even have cable. So just a confirmation that Democrats are behind the times in how they're reaching voters, and another just really important reminder of how important our work and education is at TFC to try and change that, and convince campaigns to do more digital and to do that work ourselves. So let's talk about that work. We are ramping up for a busy and exciting cycle in 2022, and we're well on our way towards our goal of 175, working with 175 campaigns across 500 projects. And we've started strong in 2022. Our volunteers have already built about 20 websites to help candidates in Michigan, Minnesota, and other states announce their candidacy on the right foot. And we have several email fundraising projects, Facebook and Google Ads projects, and others well underway as well. And yeah, we're either doing work already or in final conversations with most of the really important competitive states, excuse me, this year. And we just expect to have more of those conversations as we get closer to the 2022 elections. And so on our side, just want to kind of update on what we're doing to prepare for absolutely crushing these goals. And internally, we have been focusing a lot on infrastructure improvements to not only ensure that we can deliver on these goals to support a lot of campaigns across the country, but also to give our campaigns and volunteers a really awesome experience with us. So a lot of improvements to our website to just make it better to navigate, and also adding sort of a recipe book of best practices that our campaigns and volunteers can use to drive their strategy on the programs that that we support on, mostly on digital programs. And then also just the volunteer onboarding experience, making it smoother and easier for volunteers to understand what their first steps are and just really hit the ground running to deliver great value to campaigns.
Cool.
And
there's a surprise slide.
yeah, and just wanted to share that in the work that we've done so far in 2022, we've just received a lot of love from campaigns. I think our work has just been really appreciated, and we can only hope and expect for more of that as the year goes on. So want to share, but we'll get into our awesome guest speakers right after this. But before we do that, just want to quickly share how you all, if you're inclined, can help us reach our goals in 2022. 3 quick things: recruiting friends to volunteer with TFC, applying for projects yourself, and if you're new to TFC, RSVPing for our new volunteer welcome events. Our next one is on April 13th. And then also donating to TFC. Organizations with smaller budgets like ours mean that your dollar really goes far. And so any help there is appreciated. And with that, I will hand it back to Dave, Daley, and Greg to chat about gerrymandering.
The most fun topic out there, but probably the most important. So I wanted to introduce David just briefly, and then kind of get into what he sees as the state of things. And by the way, the Q&A thing on Zoom should be open, so I would love to make this interactive. If any of the candidates have questions for Daley, please feel, or for David, I keep saying that. For David, please feel free to interrupt, and really would love to make it more back and forth. So David is a senior fellow at Fair Vote and is the author of Rat, Asterisk, the true story behind the secret plan to steal American democracy and unrigged, how we are battling to save that democracy. He's a former editor-in-chief of Salon.com, CEO of the Connecticut News Project, and someone that I always love to hear from, but not, it's not always it's a strange thing where it's like a wonderful speaker, but about a sad subject. So David, if you want to kind of just give everybody your view on kind of what's in store and how the gerrymandering process wrapped up, that'd be awesome.
Sure, happy to. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Amanda. Pleasure to be with you all. Such an admirer of the important work that Tech for Campaigns does to bring cutting edge tools and digital strategies that prepare candidates for our most important yet somehow underappreciated still elections for state legislatures nationwide. Especially thrilled to be joined by these tremendous candidates for Minnesota Senate. This might be the single most flippable chamber in the nation, which means your work, your donations, and their victories are truly impactful and make all the difference between progress and gridlock in a closely contested state. Because you are with us today, I'm going to assume you understand that Democrats must do more than chase shiny national elections or pour millions into defeating red state Senate boogeymen. We saw the limits of those strategies once again in 2020. Joe Biden was elected president. He's been hemmed in by the filibuster. Megabucks were dumped into defeating Mitch and Lindsey and Susan Collins, and a lot of that money, right, might as well have just been set on fire. And meanwhile, as Amanda just showed us, we're reminded every day of the importance of state legislatures. Just think for a minute about all the crucial things controlled by them: public health response during a pandemic, state policies on policing and racial justice, election law, how easy or how difficult it is to cast a vote, and who has those obstructions placed between themselves and the ballot box, who controls certifications of electors or authorizes statewide audits, reproductive rights at the dangerous moment when the Supreme Court could undo Roe, and state legislatures are turning citizens into bounty hunters against women and healthcare providers, whether or not our students can read books like Beloved or learn the nation's complicated racial history. But perhaps most importantly, in 3/4 of our states, state legislatures control redistricting, both for legislative chambers and the US House, meaning they dictate the playing field for the next decade of elections. And now that the US Supreme Court has closed federal courts to partisan gerrymandering claims, the power to draw those lines matters more than ever. The future of our democracy and the kind of nation we want to live in all depends on who is in charge of state legislatures. Democrats got outflanked a decade ago in this fight in all of these crucial states that Greg and Amanda are talking about, and we're still paying the price for it. After the 2018 elections, a blue wave year, 59 million Americans lived in a state in which one or both chambers of the state legislature were controlled by the party that won fewer votes that fall. And all of those states, by the way, were states where Democratic candidates won more votes. Republicans held control anyway. So we're talking about those 2011 lines in places like Wisconsin and North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Ohio, Texas. They not only endured for a decade, but they've given Republicans an upper hand in all of those states for another cycle. We landed in this position because Republicans understood the value of state legislatures for all of these reasons and invested in them at precisely the moment when Democrats decided demographics would be their destiny. Just over 10 years ago, Karl Rove published an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and revealed a Republican initiative called the Redistricting Majority Project, or REDMAP for short. Republicans out of power in Washington after the 2008 Obama wave had figured out a path back. It ran through state legislatures during a census year election. The plan was to control redistricting, to lock Democrats out of the process, draw themselves these friendly maps that would last for 10 years. Rove said it would be as easy as this. Republicans had identified 107 key state legislative races across 16 states: Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, states we keep talking about. They'd flood those sleepy local races with about $30 million And if they captured those down ballot races, they'd be able to draw themselves entrenched majorities in otherwise competitive battlegrounds, as well as take complete control of mapping about 190 of the 435 US House seats. That is a pretty good head start. It was a political masterstroke, right? $30 million. It's a bargain. It's the biggest heist in many ways in American politics. They found a loophole in the system. They drove a truck right through it. We are still very much living in the nation that RedMap built. We all know how it paid dividends immediately. Obama is reelected in 2012. Democrats add to their majority in the US Senate. They win 1.4 million more votes for the US House, but Republicans hold that chamber and it's not even close, 234-201, thanks to the lines that they drew themselves. We have had gerrymandering for years. Of course, you all are a tech audience though, right? You know the difference between the maps that were drawn in 2001 and 1991 and the maps that were drawn in 2011 and what's happening this year. It's high-tech mapping software. It's the speed of the computers. It's how granular and precise this data is. We've never been better at gerrymandering, and that's why these maps have really been etched in stone. We see this when you look at a state like Wisconsin, a pretty serious example of this. In 2018, voters prefer Democratic candidates up and down the ballot. It's a big blue wave. Scott Walker goes down. Tammy Baldwin gets reelected. Democrats sweep all the statewide offices. They win about 204,000 more votes for the state assembly, but Republicans hold that chamber 63-36. You know all the similar stories, I'm sure. Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Texas, Ohio, Michigan, Virginia.
David, yes. I have a related question, if you don't mind me throwing you off a little bit.
Nope.
So how has it changed this year from the historical background of elder gerrymander?
Sure.
You know, and the sort of the high tech stuff that you just mentioned. I've been hearing some articles that are saying that it wasn't so bad, and some articles saying, "Oh no, it was terrible." Yeah. Is the truth in the middle? Was it terrible? Was it not so bad? Like how did it turn out? How did the sort of results reveal themselves?
I would say that it is sort of in the middle. What you have is a closer partisan map that has not been as bad for Democrats as a lot of people feared. Largely, this is for two reasons. State Supreme Courts in places like Ohio and North Carolina have stepped up in order to prevent extreme gerrymanders in some of the places where they happened last time. And then Democrats have wildly gerrymandered states like New York and Illinois in order to keep pace with what has happened in Florida and Texas and what continues to happen in Georgia and many other states. Then you had commissions that were adopted in Michigan and in Virginia that have been pretty helpful in bringing fairer maps to states that had really been tilted the other way for the last 10 years. But I would say that has happened at the expense of a couple of things. We really have a frozen national map now. We might have the fewest number of competitive seats left in the country that we've ever had in modern times. People are saying it could be as few as 16, 17 competitive seats out of 435. That is, something else. And it has been a brutal cycle for minority representation. A lot of these gains in population that you have seen by Black communities, by Latino communities, this has really been the driver of American population growth. And the entire point of redistricting is so political power follows population patterns. And that has simply not been the case in Texas and Georgia and Florida and all of these states that have seen the greatest gains in minority populations. They have actually lost a political power. So I think that is something pretty disturbing that we ought to be thinking about as well.
Thank you. And sorry, I was one more call for questions from the audience. If the Q&A feature, you can put them directly in the chat. But sorry, David. I couldn't help but cut to the the new news.
I was getting there.
Yeah. So what's my perception of kind of what we need to do is really be able to contest the few that are left the most effectively and strategically we can. Is that something you agree with? Is there another strategy here, or is it really this has been the hand that we dealt with? That means that the sort of bar for execution or bar is higher.
Yeah, I mean, the 2020 elections determined what the playing field was going to be, right? So once we knew who had which seats at the table, it was time to draw the lines, and so there wasn't much that could be done outside of litigation, and litigation this cycle has been effective in state courts. And it's been really ineffective in federal courts. Federal courts, of course, were closed under to partisan gerrymandering claims in the Common Cause versus Rucho case back in 2019. But you've seen Georgia, Alabama, some other states that have made racial gerrymandering claims under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, claiming that minority votes have been diluted. And what we've seen, I think, has been disturbing from the US Supreme Court in two different ways. One is in Alabama and in Georgia, the lower courts have said, yeah, these maps are gerrymandered. But the Georgia case, they said, well, there's just not enough time here to draw new lines. So you're going to have the 2022 elections on these maps anyway, when we all know that it only takes about a week to draw a new set of maps. And then Republicans have also challenged the state court rulings and they've tried to get the US Supreme Court to step in here. And they failed in the North Carolina and Ohio cases, but it was a 6-3 decision, and the three conservative justices, along with Justice Kavanaugh, have really opened the door to something that you might have read about called the independent state legislative doctrine, which suggests that when it comes to matters of election law, the judgment of the legislature is effectively supreme. And they are teeing up cases for the next session in which this could become a precedent, which I think would be dangerous and contrary to the actual meaning of the Constitution and a century of court precedent, but it makes these state legislative races that we're talking about here all the more important.
Yeah. That's definitely true. So I have two questions, both sort of related to different facets of the concept of flippability, which I'll ask from the perspective of political science rather than as a interjecting as a campaigner. Jeff asked, does this sort of all mean that much of what we want to produce for our campaigns is to appeal to moderates? Is there an argument that you could, peel off Republicans that could go moderate, or maybe vice versa? What do you sort of feel about sort of the net effects on the voting populace?
It depends on the districts in every state. You look at a state like Minnesota, it's what, I feel like I looked at it earlier, it's 34-31. Somebody will tell me if I'm wrong, I'm sure.
It's a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
It's there's 67 seats and we were 33-34 down to the GOP, and then two Democrats flipped to independents. So it's technically 36-31 right now, because the two independents caucus with the Republican Party.
I think what we need to do is be just as strategic about this as the Republicans were back in 2011 when they, and 2010, when they identified the specific seats in the specific states that they would need to win, and then they focus group messages that would work in those districts and in those states, and they acted like these local state elections were national campaigns, and brought that level of sophistication to what they were doing. I don't know what works best in in those Minnesota districts, but or in those individual Pennsylvania districts that have to be won. So is it moderates? Is it Republicans? But we have to do the work to, find out.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's a lot of the work that we've been doing is not is really on sort of, now that everybody's finally we're having less of the conversation about whether you should be on the internet. It's more about what he's saying and how you saying, who you're saying it to, and how do you get that actually across. So unless any of the candidates have a question, I will close with Jess's question, which is, at the headlines, or when we read headlines, some of these sort of headlines are saying that states are becoming unflippable. Yes, there's demographic change, but gerrymandering is really, fix that. And I know that's pretty much true, but maybe one way to answer it is that, like, when you look at 10 years, that's kind of a long time. Weird things can happen. So what do you think? Is there sort of a long-term hope?
Yeah, there's absolutely long-term hope. I mean, look at states like Texas and Arizona, and those, the maps in Texas last decade were deeply gerrymandered. And by the end of those 10 years, things had gotten super close, super tight. Georgia was, very gerrymandered. It's gotten much closer. Now, of course, what is happening right now is Republicans get to remap all those states and push the finish line out a little bit farther. But this can't go on forever. We are going to catch up with these lines. It is only a matter of time. The fact that Republicans feel the need to gerrymander this deeply and to pass laws like this is not a sign of strength. It is a sign of desperation and fear, and it's a sign of an unwillingness to meet the demands of a changing nation and a multiracial democracy. We will have a multiracial democracy. But it takes time, right? I mean, we are still working to perfect a union that was, founded with only white men of property having the right to vote, that the Reconstruction Amendments guaranteed, a Black citizenship and equal protection only, the 14th and 15th Amendments, the Voting Rights Act in 1965. We have a lot of work left ahead of us, and this is the work we all must do. Democracy is a verb. It takes all of us to work at it and to tend it.
Small capitalization democracy, small d. Thank you, David. With that, we'll throw it to Rob, our state director, to talk 3 lovely DFLers. Please, everybody, feel free, or David, feel free to stick around, and you can participate in kind. Rob, take it away.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks, David. Before we get started with our 3 great candidates from the state of Minnesota, I think everyone should throw in the chat like how they would rate David's room on there. I think he's a definite 10 out of 10. Like that background is awesome. So in addition to all the great information he shared. So I'm Rob Harrell. I'm the state director with TFC. I've been with the organization since 2020. And in 2020, I was a state director in Minnesota, where it was a great honor to take part in some of the campaigns there, and happy to be joined today by 3 great candidates that are running for Senate in Minnesota this cycle. So I want to give each one of them an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their district first and foremost. So why don't we start with our incumbent on the panel, Senator Eric Putnam.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. So my name's Eric. I was elected in 2020 to the Minnesota Senate. Out of about 45,000 votes, I won by 315. So when you think about what you're doing and your opportunities to make a difference and to make a change, that's how close some of these elections are going to be. Razor thin. And you could very possibly be the person who pushes it over the edge. So it was a super close election. And a lot of the elections in Minnesota are that close. I'm a professor at 2 private liberal arts colleges out here. That's my day job, where I teach about public argument and the history of civil rights rhetoric and that kind of stuff. My community is fascinating. You know, a lot of you guys are you guys are all tech folks. So do some of you probably live in the Bay, right? Does anyone live in the Bay Area? Some of you do? Well, I grew up in East San Jose. I'm from East San Jose. And I grew up there in the 70s. And I saw orchards turn into apartments. And I know kind of what it's like to be in a community of great change. And that's what Minnesota is right now. Because with those kinds of deep structural changes, there's also kinds of opportunities and anxiety at the same time. And that's what my area of Minnesota is all about, St. Cloud. We have a tremendously dynamic population, but demographics aren't destiny. We have lots of conversations about who we are and where we're going. And it's a wonderful place to be involved in politics because you get to shape those conversations. And I saw someone post in the chat earlier about converting Republicans or moderates. From my perspective, what we do is just help people realize that our values are their values. Our project here is revelation, not persuasion, especially in central Minnesota. Because we know as Democrats, as progressives, of people who care about the issues of working people, that we have their best interests at heart. We are who we're talking to. And that's what's, I think, incredibly special about the area that I represent, because it's a concretization of some of those different forces and those opportunities.
And Senator Putnam, where exactly is that in the state of Minnesota? Where give the viewers an idea of where the St. Cloud area really lies in the state?
All right. So like I'm a product of California public schools. So like I didn't even know Minnesota existed. And when someone told me Iowa was nearby, I was completely freaked out. I didn't know that was real. My area of Minnesota, St. Cloud, is about an hour northwest of the Twin Cities. So basically kind of almost in the geographic center of the state.
Awesome. Thank you for that. For our next candidate, I'm going to throw it over to Heather Gustafson. Heather, you probably had what a lot of people would consider a dream job that you left for what was your dream job, and now you're running for Senate. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, and I have to say a shout out to Senator Putnam, because I am from Sartell, Minnesota, and central Minnesota is a very misunderstood place. So I'm so happy that he's there. Yeah, I started out as a radio DJ. So I grew up in Sartell. I went to college at Morehead State. I kind of fell backwards into a radio career. And I did that for about 12, 13, 14 years. I can't remember how long, a long time. And then ended up going back to college to get my master's degree in education. And so I am a world history teacher now. I've been teaching public high school for quite a while. I've been a teacher for about 12 years. And somewhere around 2016, I decided to get a lot more involved in the our local elections. And again, I'm falling into another career. So yeah, it's been exciting, but yeah, just, and I will just say though, out of those things, the three careers that I've just mentioned, right? I mean, I don't know that this is a career. This is really more an extension of a service to my community, but I would say like they all vary, all the skill sets overlap with each other very well. And really like this and teaching and being in broadcast are all really just about connecting with people. So it's not as varied as you think it is. It's all actually kind of the same job. So yeah.
And it feels like public service runs in the blood.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, definitely honored to have Alan Moy with us tonight too. Alan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, because your story is pretty special.
Thanks, Rob. Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Roy. I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the White Earth Nation in northern Minnesota. My cousin happens to be Peggy Flanagan, the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota. I've been in tribal politics for about 4 years now. I was elected. My term is expiring this year. And when the redistricting happened, it's done by the courts in Minnesota. So a lot of folks had approached me when that came out in February, and they wanted me to run. And I had run 2 years ago. This is a deep red area in Minnesota, very deep red. However, what's interesting about this area here is now there are the 3 largest American Indian reservations in the state of Minnesota in the same Senate district. And so we feel pretty confident that we can flip this district. My background, I'm a tribal leader. I'm a father of 3. I went to school at the University of Minnesota. I'm a Army reservist. I command a unit out in Denver. I was on active duty, went to Iraq, been all over the place. And so I just like to call myself a Democrat, just a regular old American here up in northern Minnesota, just trying to do right by everyone that lives here. So, but just really honored to be on here.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for being with us. You touched on something at the end there, Alan, that when I was working in Minnesota in 2020, I would come back to my fellow TFC staffers and I'd say, they're just gosh darn so nice in Minnesota. Like, I don't like what's going on. And all three of you have confirmed that. But what, you know, and take this, we can take this in whatever order you raise your hands here. But what gets Minnesotans' blood boiling in this election? What are the issues that are really going to be front and center for all three of you? Maybe we'll start with you, Alan.
Sure. I know in northern Minnesota here and in Minnesota in general right now is the economy. A lot of folks are having a discussion around that, especially with the international incidents that are happening. The gas prices, that's being discussed regularly. I talk to tribal members and non-tribal members alike. A lot of folks are having this discussion. However, what's unique to Minnesota is that we have a very, very huge surplus. And I just seen the Governor Walz come out today, talk about some money getting back to some of the citizens here in Minnesota. So that's going to be helpful. It's going to be helpful for our workers and our families. What I do know is that a lot of folks are getting back to work, which is a good thing. The effects of the pandemic are starting to go away a little bit. But we still have a long ways to go forward. We need to make sure that our educators are being taken care of, our schools, our students. These are all very big things that are happening right now. And a lot of it's being driven by the economy. And so I know that's true for the conservatives as well. I do have conservative supporters up here. I was endorsed by Colin Peterson, for those that may know him in Minnesota. He was in our our congressional district before the redistricting happened. And so we are having discussions with everyone across the board. So, but yet definitely the economy right now.
And Heather, Alan touched upon the governor's proposal, I think from today, and I think last week in the Democratic controlled House, they had a bill also talking about a gas tax holiday. Are the inflation prices, are those the things that you're hearing and as your campaign starts to get off the ground?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The gas tax is because I mean, like I just filled up yesterday and it was $70 and it's, you know, normally maybe 50, 55, something like that. And so I took a look at it like, whoa, okay, this is happening. The gas tax would be, you know, I think is something people are talking about, but, you know, then you wonder about like, are we going to actually see the difference? Are gas stations going to be, you know, honor that? You know, so those are some things obviously that the gas is going to be a big thing, especially with summer approaching. But I would just say that what I noticed the most, and I think one of the things that motivated me to run is being a public school teacher. Right now, Minneapolis teachers are asking for smaller class sizes, for living wages, for, you know, mental health resources. And so that is kind of, I would say, a consistent thread with most of our communities is that public schools are under attack. And, you know, never before, I teach world history and we just, you know, teach the standards, and never before have we been put in such a controversial position. I mean, I can't, it's just nerve wracking every day to even just open up your email and find out what you're going to be getting in. And so I think, you know, we're defending our public schools right now. We're standing by our students. We know that what student conditions are, or what our work conditions are, or what student conditions are, right? Like teacher support is student support. So yeah, I mean, the public school is probably what I hear a lot of from just neighbors and moms and people who live in my community about, like, you know, what we can do to make things more fair and equitable.
Thank you. Senator Putnam, we heard from David earlier talking about the Minnesota Senate being maybe the most flippable body of government out there in the country this cycle. What's it going to mean to people in St. Cloud and the rest of the state of Minnesota when the DFL is able to flip the Senate this cycle? What's that going to mean to real people?
Sure. So first I want to acknowledge Heather real quick, because I'm glad that she's talking about education, because the person that she's run against is a troglodyte who hates books. So I'm very, very hopeful for her election in particular. Now, when it comes to the sort of general political climate right now, as a sense of getting how things are going to be better once we win, I think that the primary issue right now in this election is anxiety. Everyone's anxious. We're still COVID-y. I mean, I know that's not an adjective, but we're still COVID-y, and we're coming out of that and all the trauma that we've experienced in the last 2 years. And so we're going to look for things to hate, whether that's the teachers in your school, or the school board, whether it's gas taxes. We are unfortunately in a position right now, I think, where our primary concern that we're likely to engage in this electoral cycle is dealing with that anxiety and its tendency to manifest into hatred. So again, our job is, I think, to counteract that and to say that once we get elected and once we get the majority, we're in an opportunity to actually institute things for people who care about each other in a new way. That to me is the fundamental difference. It's not this policy or that policy. It's that when Democrats are in charge in the Senate in 2022, we'll be in a position to start talking about care in ways that are, I think, significant to everyone in our communities. When we think about childcare, and the parents who can't go to work because of their anxiety over their kids, not knowing where to place them, not being able to pay for it. When we think about people who have elder care, seniors in homes who we can't see, these are all just moments of care being frustrated. But the same is true, I think, when it comes to public safety, which is going to be a significant issue in this election. It's a controversial one, goes in lots of different directions, but again, the fundamental thing animating it is our anxiety. I think once we are in control, and I firmly believe that we will be, especially with your help, we'll be able to forward a more bold care agenda where we talk about how to help each other and a little less how to undermine or distrust each other.
We are definitely looking forward to providing some of that help on the TFC front. Our volunteers are fired up. As you know, you have 2 projects coming up, both the website and a digital ads project. Really early in the cycle, to be quite honest, right? To be running digital ads, and you mentioned Heather's opponent, but you've had some GOP messaging going against you already as an incumbent in your district. What are they saying, and how is digital important for you to sort of combat, some of the lies that they're frankly putting out there?
Oh, it's incredibly important. And yeah, I'm already being attacked. I started getting attacked on radio and on online ads about a month ago. And it's what you're going to see largely here is an effort to attach Democratic candidates to the brand of the Democratic Party, which has suffered in years here. And where I'm at, and I think where Alan is too, people are typically, they self-identify as independents. They're most likely kind of center-right, most likely, but by and large, they kind of identify as independents. And so being attached with the brand of the DFL, I don't know how it is for Alan, but if I get attached as being a DFLer, it means I'm from Minneapolis, which then has a connection to raced populations and urban blight and those kinds of things. So that's what they're already doing to us right now, is they're saying, oh, anyone who's a Democrat is just one of those cities people, which is divisive and unpleasant, and it pits the cities against the rest of the state. So that's kind of the early theme that we're seeing. Now, when it comes to digital advertising in particular, I was really surprised by the graphic that you showed earlier, Amanda, when you said 7% versus 60%. This is an incredible opportunity because the Minnesota GOP basically does most of their internet stuff on an abacus. They do a lot of it, but they don't do it in a way that's attuned to the dynamics of the medium. And the DFL hasn't been especially good about that either. They basically take sort of general commercial strategies and apply them to political advertising. I don't think they really understand what truly can be done creatively to get your message out online. When you got people who know what they're doing, and you got people that care, talked about to them about it. So to me, that's the big key, is that digital advertising for us is an opportunity for much more creative engagement with the electorate. And I think that's an opportunity that we've had that the GOP has yet to take advantage of.
Awesome. And we We have a few questions in our final minutes that are going to come from some of our volunteers who were highly encouraging to sign up for these projects. We mentioned Senator Putnam's website and ads projects kicking off soon. Alan's website project is getting ready to get staffed and underway. And later in the cycle, we'll be working on ads for Heather as well. So exciting opportunities to make a real difference in Minnesota. But my last question for each one of you is, what's your go-to hot dish? Like what's the one that never fails? We'll start with Alan.
Mine is wild rice hot dish with a little bit of garlic and just some regular hamburger. And you get the tater tots in there, and you just mix it all up, and it comes out really good. And a lot of butter. That's my go-to wild rice hot dish.
That's some good American wholesomeness right there. How about you, Heather? What's the one you never leave home without?
Yeah, I would just say tater tot hot dish. So I think there's going to be a running theme, because if Eric says tater tots too, then we know that must be a Minnesota thing. But it is just tater tots, green beans. We do cream of chicken soup and hamburger. And yeah, it just smells like heaven.
Nice. And Senator Putnam, last but not least.
Rob, what are you doing to me, man? Are you working for the bad guys? I told you I'm from California. I lived here for 25 years, right? But I told you I'm from California. That actually was the theme in my past election cycles, is this a California liberal, Eric Putnam, and I have a big photo with my tattoos. So usually I like hot dish is wonderful, and apple pie and hot dogs. Love them all.
Yes. Good answer. Good answer. And you're right. I as a Californian myself, I know that follows you everywhere else you go. We had a question from one of the volunteers, and maybe I'll kick it back to you, Senator Putnam, since you touched on this. Can you explain the DFL and what the differences are there for those of us who are not totally familiar with Minnesota politics?
You know, there's a great book, if this is something you're interested in, by a former senator named Dave Durenberger. It's called When Republicans Were Progressive. And it's a history of Minnesota politics in the 20th century. And it talks about how Republicans in Minnesota actually founded our Pollution Control Agency and created the income tax. They used to be actually pretty reasonable humans. The DFL was originally basically two different parties. There was a Democratic Party and the Farmer and Labor Party. And in the early part of the 20th century, the Democratic Party was associated with corruption, Tammany Hall kind of issues, like insider, bureaucratic bad stuff. And the Farmer and Labor Party was much more well-respected. So the two joined, I think, in the 1950s and became the DFL, which is the Democratic Farmer and Labor Party.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you, all three of you, David as well, for being with us tonight. We greatly appreciate the time. We're looking forward to working on all of your campaigns. And we'll get this group together in November when we celebrate 3 pretty big victories. So I'll kick it back to Greg to finish off for the night. But from me personally, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, and Amanda, might be the good time for the project links. But Brent asked something about the importance of websites. Maybe they don't seem as important as they must say. What is the importance of a good candidate website? The importance of a good candidate website is the central place for all of that, work. When you have a digital ad, when you have an email, when you just hear about somebody on the radio or on TV, it's the place that you can Google. And we often see that as we get to the end of the year, visits to campaign websites go up and up and up and up and up. And especially in the last week, as folks get ballot guides and sample ballots, people are often looking to learn who's who. One of the sort of tricks about, say, legislative politics is, generally speaking, nobody knows who you are. So that's the big challenge. It's that revelation that the senator was talking about. So when somebody does hear your name, you want to make sure that you're in position to have a strong story to tell about who you are and what you stand for. Any final questions before we go? And with that, I won't keep everybody. So thank you so much for coming. Really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you, David. Alan, Eric, and Heather, Rob, and Amanda. It's a wonderful program. Please sign up for a project, refer a friend, or donate to a program which makes us all happen, gets all of the help to these candidates that need it. Have a great night, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
Everybody.
Bye.